Hi and welcome. So the objective is we're going to take a simple riff, simple idea, turn that into a 4-bar segment of music, and then we're going to turn that segment of music into a song. So we're going to start with a really cool thing that I have. And this whole thing is being based on a vocal hook, and it's all very political.
Invade, populate, breed, dominate, invade, populate, breed, dominate.
Okay, cool. Here's a trick. You might really dig this trick. If you're having trouble making a bass line or something, take whatever it is you're using and actually derive the bass specifically from the rhythm of that thing. So you get this.
Invade, populate, breed, dominate, invade, populate, breed, dominate, invade.
Okay, cool. Bump it up, bump. So if you put a kick under that. Right. So that's the first trick. And I like starting with vocals or really simple synth ideas. If you start with a vocal, I found the whole song falls together. However, I've gone a different route and I came up with this bass line. So I'm just going to keep that vocal off so you can hear what's going on. This is the bass line I've come up with.
Populate, breed, dominate, invade, populate, breed, dominate, invade.
Now, the reason I did that is because that bass line that I showed you that I derived this whole thing from, let's have a look at it.
Invade, populate, breed, dominate, invade, populate, breed, dominate, invade.
It's very on the beat. I might use it for something else. I might not. But I like this one because when you look at it, you'll notice there's a lot of syncopation in it. This is at 140 BPM, and when you've got syncopation happening at 140 BPM, it sounds really cool. I'm discovering increasingly with music, the trick is to underpin something complicated with something simple. So if there's a 4 on the floor, as much as I really don't like 4 on the floors, if you have a 4 on the floor, kick drum going boom, 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 you can put some really complicated rhythmic syncopations over the top of it. It's a really cool thing as well because an audience can just zone into that 4 on the floor and you can get away with murder on top. Back to the murder.
Invade, populate, breed, dominate, invade, populate, breed, dominate.
Right. Easy. And that one's F. And all I've done is I've just thrown in some notes with that one. So I made this section in F, no reason, just like F. And what I've done is I've gone up to the minor third. So that's from the F up to the A flat. And then up to the diminished fifth. So I love those notes because they're very emotive and they sort of twist you around, and then you can do a whole bunch of stuff on top of them, but we'll get to that in a minute. So from this, we have a bass line. Awesome. Next, let's talk about that kick drum. There is going to be a 4 on the floor underpinning everything, but what I've done is I went through and I came up with a pretty complicated kick drum pattern, and it kind of looks like this. Dun 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 dun. Now, here's a really interesting thing with your kick and your bass is, so this is looking at both kick and bass right now. And you'll notice that the kick, here's your bass. Bass is the one on top, and the kick is the one sitting on the C below. The kick and the bass are hitting common points, except here they're missing out because I'm being cool. So as a result, they're working together. But the problem I've got there is that the kick drum's too complicated. My problem in my music is my shit's too complex. I complicate stuff too much, and a huge battle I have is simplifying stuff because when you're playing stuff out of a shitty phone on the speakers, no one's gonna fucking understand a lot of the detail in the music. So that's got to be simplified. And also, if somebody's at a party or a club and they're listening to your music and they're drunk, which, hey, that's awesome, that's what happens, and they're listening to it on a shitty speaker system, it's going to sound like crap. You got to keep it simple. So let's firstly look at this kick drum. And remember, with this kick drum, there's going to be a 4 on the floor under it as well. I usually have 2 kick drums. We'll get to that later. So if I simplify that, it's going to come up like this. Let's have a look at those two working together. It's a little bit of the 4 on the floor happening under it. It's just adding a bit of funk, and funk is important. People need more funk in their diet, more funk. When I put a clap under that, because claps are awesome, right. So the reason I've done that gung-ga on the clap is just to break it up a little bit so it's not just 2/4. Because normally your clap in a normal situation, in a normal song made by normal people, which is unfortunately not me, sounds like this. And that's great, but I personally prefer cutting shit up a bit, because what you can do is, like in the verse section, still got rhythm, and then when your chorus kicks in, bam. So you got the first clap hitting on the one end and the second clap hitting on the 4. That's a really common thing in music like Manchester, and you'll hear that in the Prodigy and stuff like that. A lot of breakbeat stuff does that. The hi-hat is really simple. It's just like it's just an offbeat. Nice and simple. You'll notice that I've put with the volumes of the hi-hat that sits on the 8th is the loudest, and then the one on the 16th is quieter. So it's da, 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 because it's all about making space. Now we have a bass line that works with a kick that's working. I've taken that bass line and I've split it into 2 instruments because I like weird, crazy shit. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play you what those 2 instruments sound like. So I took one part of the bass, and then I took the second part. And when you're looking at this, you'll notice that the top line is the first one I took and the bottom line is the second one. They're playing the same bass line that you heard originally. It's just now it's separated over 2 instruments. I do this to break the monotony. So there's always something happening and there's always something cool, kind of, there's a conversation happening. You might have a big guitar and a big synthesizer. When they're both talking at the same time, you get a big mess. But if the big guitar says something first, the first part of the phrase, and the big synth says the second part of the phrase, you will understand the two. And you can focus on having a big guitar sound and then a big synthesizer sound. And it's awesome. And there's freedom and love. Because we love freedom and love, don't we? So this is where it's at. And with the drums, cool. They're playing the exact same thing that was originally stated. And what I'm going to do is the first one we saw, the top one that got split off is going to go off to one sound. The bottom one that we split off is going to go to another sound. So there's going to be a call and response conversation going with those 2 sounds. And then I'm going to keep the original one and I'm going to put it on a sub bass. So it's playing the whole way through just to pin everything down. Okay. Next, melody. I went kind of crazy with this melody. I'll be honest, I'm not the most amazing guy when it comes to writing a melody or anything. This took me a while, a whole bunch of fucking around to get this right. And this is what I came up with. So that melody was partly based on the bass line. Obviously, it melodically fits with the bass line, but also you'll notice that I'm using a lot of the same notes, which was F, A flat, and B. It started with me basically copying the bass line and then popping the octaves around. So it might have been shit like that, actually moving the octaves around and then actually going, fuck it, this approach isn't working. This took me a few hours because I suck. And I resorted to gasp, sitting down at a keyboard and fucking bashing the thing out. That's a really cool melody because it's really emotive and really crazy. Really important note. You'll notice that I am using the shittiest sounds available. There's no big complicated synths going on because the objective right now is to come up with melodies and ideas that are simple and effective. This is really, really important. Like, this is so important. If I went to the modular right now or the samplers and everything else right now, man, I would be wasting so much time. And sure, it might be fun, but it would end up being a massive fucking clusterfuck because the whole thing just turns into this melting pot of shit. You need to start simple. And you'll notice that the instruments that I'm using here, like this thing here is the Cubase creme de la creme of shit. It's awful. That's awful. Like, it's this horrible fucking synth that comes with Cubase free, and it's just total shit. But what's awesome about that is I don't spend any time at all trying to fix it because it's shit. And it will let me focus on the melodies and the structure and the interlocking rhythms and all that stuff to make sure stuff fits. Step one, don't fuck around. Focus on the melody, the thing that they're gonna go away whistling. Nothing else is more important than that. You gotta make them whistle, you gotta leave an emotional response, and you gotta get them dancing. Everything else doesn't fucking matter right now. We're gonna get to all that shit later, but right now, keep it simple.
Okay.
So the next thing to happen is I made these really cool pad things out of the worst sound I could possibly find, and they sound like this.
Invade, populate, breed, dominate,
Right. Yeah, here we're going for that sound. We've got a sound going on. So something I also like to do is when I listen to those lyrics, well, I started with those lyrics, and those lyrics were invade, populate. I really should know them by now.
invade, populate, breed, dominate,
And they are dark. They have a dark, driving, menacing feeling to them. So all of the music around it is going to become dark, driving, and menacing. This song is kind of an instrumental, but if it wasn't going to be an instrumental, I would listen to these sounds and I would say, where does this music put me right now? What story is this music telling me? And then the lyrics would be about that story that the lyrics is that the music's saying. So whatever emotion, feeling that music has, the lyrics are going to copy it, and there's a story in there. But if this is going to be a fully fledged, like worked out song, we'd look at that and go, what's the story here? And the lyrics are going to be about that, but it isn't. So we're not going to. Okay. So the next thing is we need to write a part B to this. I actually wrote a part B. I wrote part 2, but part 2 sucked. So I ended up calling it part 3 because part 3 didn't suck. You know, the songwriting process for me is like pulling fucking teeth. Let's have a listen to it. Shut up. Okay. So the first thing you're going to notice is we've had a key change. The key change has gone into C. And I'm using the same notes that I was using, or the same relationship of notes that I was using in that A part. Remember, the A part was F, A flat, F, B. So that's like 1 minor third, flat 5. This is also 1 minor third, flat 5. And I put it on C. just cause. So what I've done here is I've transposed the 1 part over the 3 part. So the original part is on the top and the new part's on the bottom. And rhythmically, they are the same. Because this track is ultimately going to be a dance track. And the trick with dance tracks is you got to make people dance. People want to hear a groove and they want to get locked into that groove. My advice is spend hours on your groove to make sure the groove actually works, then expand everything out. And then to make this sound a little different, I just move the notes around. Easy. All right. Do you remember what I did originally is when I took those the bass line and I split it into 2 parts? Did exactly what I did last time. So here are those 2 parts. There you go. Call and response, everything is based off the 1 rhythm, and that 1 rhythm was derived from the initial vocal idea. So everything is being built off the 1 thing. Everything is tied together. That's called a composite rhythm. Composite rhythms are very, very important in dance music and music in general, is that that's what everything falls into. And if anything is derived off it, any little percussion sounds, either they work on the composite rhythm or they're setting up the composite rhythm. Composite rhythm. This time I have another little melody. Here's the 2 split basses, the same drums, keep the drums the same, and the melody. There's no real rhyme or reason to this one. I wanted to do something that was different to the melody in the first segment, and this really falls on the beat because I'm thinking this is going to be some crazy modular sound that's going fucking nuts. It did originally start with taking the original part and moving that around and fucking around. It ended up, once again, me just sitting around on the keyboard going, oh God, that doesn't work. Oh, that works. Oh, that works. Cool. Fucking around trying to get it going. Very rarely do I get a melody that just pops into my head inspirationally. Actually, I do, but often they're crap. And when I actually put them down, it's like, this is shit. So I have to bash away at it. And I think one of the reasons my music's so aggressive is because by the time it gets to this stage of, I fucked around for like 5 hours and it's not working and I'm really pissed off. I'm just an angry man. Here's the chords that go over the top of it. The chords are following the melody. Right. And we'll see right away. So as you remember, the bass is hitting the C, then it goes up to the E flat. And the chords are following that exactly. Meanwhile, over the top, there is a line of notes that are repeating over the whole thing. No rhyme or reason to that either. It just sounded cool. So now we have 2 parts. The whole origin of this is that the original idea came from a vocal idea. And that could have been a riff or anything else, but it was a vocal idea. We built a bass line around that vocal idea. And then we built a drum section around that vocal idea. So the bass line was slightly altered to become the second segment. So everything has been derived from this one idea. And once again, I will stress, it's important to do this using simple instruments and to focus on the music and the beats. Crazy sounds are not important right now. Solid songwriting at this phrase right now, that's what's important. The other thing that's really important, everything has a composite rhythm running through it. And that composite rhythm, because you're sticking to it, is going to allow people to zone into it. It will allow the people's clock to zone into it so they can dance. Next month, we're going to turn this into a song. We're going to stretch it out and we're going to start adding synths. And that's going to be a really big one. All right, rock and roll.